if gasoline goes to $10 a gallon, okay, it's not going to be forever.
It kind of feels like we're just being dragged into another Middle East war.
How badly will the U.S. war on Iran hurt the Republican Party and support for Donald Trump? Polls show most Americans are against the war. But what could be more significant is that even some high-profile figures in the MAGA sphere, people who usually support practically everything the president does, are against it. I'm David Levitz, and I'm joined by DW correspondent Benjamin Alvarez-Gruber. He's at the CPAC conference in Texas. Benjamin, just for people who don't know it, the CPAC, it's kind of a Super Bowl event of right-wing politics. Or how would you describe it?
That's right, that would be one way of describing this. There are many international attendees that come to the CPAC conference. It's not just here in the United States that they happen for a couple of days with venues, with people talking, connecting each other. There are also CPACs in, for example, Hungary and Mexico, so in other countries around the world where the idea is to connect like-minded people and talk about policy and the way forward in those different challenges that they are facing in each country, and the way that they also like to portray themselves as a unified front with their conservative ideas.
Now, Benjamin, you're there together with reporter Misha Komodovsky. He's been talking to some of the attendees at the CPAC. Let's listen to what they've been saying about the war with Iran.
Do you support President Trump's war in Iran?
Absolutely. That was the only way that we could get rid of all those mullahs and then Islamic Republic.
Why do you support it, and what's going to happen next, in your opinion?
We hope that this will end up to freedom for Iranian people.
That is a very large split right now. And I think a lot of people are hesitant just because of the past wars that we've had. There's not really any evidence that we're going to be in and out of there like it's claimed to be right now. So I think a lot of people are just nervous. They're not necessarily backtracking entirely on voting for Trump or anything like that, but it kind of feels like we're just being dragged into another Middle East war.
And I'm not a magician. I don't have a crystal ball, but I have every confidence in him. And if gasoline goes to $10 a gallon, okay, it's not going to be forever, but it will never get there. I just don't believe it will ever get there.
But what if it does?
Then I'll suck it up and deal with it.
Things happen, things come about. He got the information that Iran was making a nuclear war, and he's not going back on what he promised us. Things are evolving that he didn't think was going to happen, and he's working on it.
Currently, this war affects prices in the United States and in other countries. Are you willing to pay this price for that?
We are, because we still believe President Trump 100%.
Gosh, that's a question. I would rather us not be at war. I'd rather us be in peacetime now, but I understand that sometimes there's a need to go into a country if we need to, so I trust his judgment on that.
Okay, we heard some strong support, some ambivalence. Trump's approval ratings across the board, though, are actually way down. Benjamin, in recent days, they've been as low as 36%. And that's largely people reacting against the war, reacting against these rising prices we're seeing due to the war. How unified or disunified is the MAGA movement at this point?
It's important to note here that the people that come to the CPAC conference are the strongest supporters of President Trump, of those who we heard that. But there are many critics within the MAGA base. You mentioned some of the high-ranking figures within the conservative movement, Tucker Carlson. There are others that are also speaking here. A couple of hours ago, I saw Steve Bannon, one of the chief strategists, basically, of President Trump's 2016 campaign. Matt Gaetz, a former Florida congressman, he will also speak here at CPAC. He's also been very critical of this war in Iran, but what people are saying here is that it was necessary and that they don't see that this is kind of breaking two of his campaign promises. That was ending the United States' endless wars and also lowering prices. In this case, Iran both are connected with this military intervention along with Israel, and also the increase that we see with the price, especially of fuel, of cars here in the United States. But those who are here, we've seen many, not just Iranian flags, but also MAGA, Make Iran Great Again hats, so referring to this MAGA slogan that led President President Trump to the White House again. And those who are here are very keen on hearing Reza Pahlavi, the Iranian opposition leader that has been trying to position itself as a counterpart, as the future leader of Iran. But that is not something that many outside that are not attending this conference see like that. They're very critical of the way that the United States has been coordinating, has been launching these attacks on Iran.
Now, you mentioned that people who are at the CPAC are not necessarily average Republican voters. They're pretty diehard. What do most Republicans want Trump to do at this point?
So you can see a clear generational divide when it comes to the military operations and also how far this will go. For many, they said military action was needed, but they're strongly against troops, boots on the ground, to say that this is not something that the United States should do. It's also not clear how long this war will drag on. Several people say that U.S. President Trump and the White House were emboldened by this military operation in Venezuela that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro, hoping something similar might happen in Iran. So basically a decapitation campaign, you could call it.
Hey, Benjamin, thanks so much for your reporting. So how many Republicans actually support the war? Let's look at a poll that CBS did last week. They found that 84% of all Republicans back the U.S. military action against Iran. Support's even higher among Trump's diehard fans, the MAGA base. 92% of them back the president's decision to go to war. But it's a different picture if we look at Republicans who don't consider themselves part of MAGA. Only 70% of those party members support the war. And we've now got someone who's very familiar with right-wing politics in the U.S. Matthew Sheffield is the host of the Theory of Change podcast. He co-founded multiple right-wing media sites, but over time he became disillusioned with the movement. Now he speaks and reports about how he says right-wing media distort facts and create an alternative reality for their audience. Matthew, thanks so much for talking to me.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
So, Matthew, polls are showing that most Republicans do support military action against Iran, but not all Republicans. And it looks like support may drop off a lot if Trump expands the war. How big of a problem is the Iran war for MAGA at this point?
Well, based on the polling, it looks like it's not a big problem, but it's on the precipice, I would say. So, in other words, Trump has an ability to command loyalty from his party members because before he decided to invade Iran, before he decided to attack Iran, the MAGA base was against going to bomb Iran. So, there is some serious internal resistance to this, but a lot of the people who continue to identify as MAGA Republicans and Republicans generally, they are inclined to trust Donald Trump, despite the fact that almost no one else does.
So you're basically saying that he managed to change their opinion on whether they wanted this war or not.
Oh, yes, definitely. And this is a long-term trend that has been observable among Republicans, that it makes them distinct from other American political identities. So the other two major ones in polls so I'm actually a former opinion pollster myself. So the other two categories that we use are Democrats and independents. And the example that I often cite when I talk about these economies is that on the economy. So when Trump became the president, Republicans' opinion on the economy immediately shot up. And said it was fantastic. And even when the economy was in the middle of the COVID recession, they thought the economy was fantastic, even though you couldn't do anything or buy stuff. Whereas independents and Democrats tend to have their opinions shaped more by actually what the economy is doing. And so, but, as you said, there is a real risk for Trump, given that Americans seem to broadly across the decades, regardless of what party they are, to have an inbuilt opposition to ground troops after the prolonged debacle that was the George W. Bush invasion of Iraq.
My colleague Benjamin was mentioning that there might be a generational divide here between younger Republicans and older Republicans when it comes to support for the war. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, there does seem to be that, and this is related actually to the Trump takeover of the Republican Party. So, in the years past, the Republican Party was, generally speaking, members were in favor of foreign interventions, and Trump won the election in 2016 against opposition from all of the previous Republican Party officials by saying what Democrats and independents were saying, which was that the Iraq invasion was a disaster. And so people who became Republicans from their teenage years and younger, that's what they were brought up as the viewpoint, the correct viewpoint. And so now that Trump is, openly talking about possibly sending American troops into Iran for no apparent reason, an ever-shifting set of reasons, we'll say. That's, definitely going to raise some of those concerns that people have sublimated for now, in part because, it seems like Republicans, they were okay with bombing Iran, but, after Iraq, Americans are a lot less interested in boots on the ground in foreign countries.
And if we look beyond MAGA, most Americans do not support this war. The general line from most political commentators here is that Trump needs to seek an exit from this war as soon as possible. Do you see a good exit strategy for Trump that would satisfy his base at this point?
Well, I think the base would be satisfied with whatever it takes to get out. Trump has a habit of making bad decisions that get him in trouble, cause economic problems, and then immediately trying to reverse himself, like we just saw that with his recent threats to take over Greenland. Like he got absolutely nothing from his supposed victory, but that was enough. The base didn't necessarily care. They just wanted the problem to go away. And so, there are figures within the administration that have been repeatedly saying for weeks now that claiming that Trump has won already. And Trump himself is constantly saying a variety of different things. He's also claimed that he has achieved victory. So, he can pull out at any given time that he feels like, but he's under a lot of pressure from Saudi Arabia and from Israel, who really have a lot of personal and financial, in the case of the Saudis, direct financial ties to him and his family. So, we'll see. And I guess there also might be the other kind of wild card, which is that perhaps if Trump decides to withdraw, Israel might continue doing operations anyway. So, but long story short, I think whatever rationale he comes up with, his base is going to accept it because they just want this to go away.
So you're saying on the one hand, there's pressure from Israel and from the Saudis to keep up the war. On the other hand, there's pressure from domestic politics perspective to pull out as quickly as possible. I want to read you a quote from CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp, who ahead of this CPAC very openly said that he's worried that Republicans are not unified. And he said infighting in the party could be, quote, devastating in the midterm elections. Those are coming up in November. How do you think the war will impact the midterms?
We're still quite a few months away from them. So it's possible it might not have much of an impact at all. But I would say with regard to the kind of elite media supporters of Donald Trump, so like Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson, and like some of them, even on the further to the right of these far right people, you have Nick Fuentes, the neo-Nazi Republican. He has said, I don't like Trump anymore. I want MAGA to die. I'm going to vote for Democrats, and everyone who likes me, you should vote for Democrats because we have to kill this version of the Republican Party that's controlled by Israel. So definitely there will be some Republicans that what Trump has done here will probably permanently make them disaffected, and probably they would just stay home. And I don't imagine that they're going to vote for the Democrats.
Right. Nick Fuentes, openly anti-Semitic commentator who's echoing all kinds of anti-Semitic tropes there that Israel controls the U.S. Let's talk about the future of the Republican Party, which you kind of touched on there. This is already the time when Republicans are starting to think about who might run in the primaries to become the next president. How do you see that playing out now with this war that is so unpopular?
Well, I'd say probably the biggest impact of the war is going to be on J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance had, kind of positioned himself as the vice president to make the claim that he was the heir apparent. But given that the far right people who had been the power base for him within the party, the very extreme Christian nationalist, Christian supremacists who want non-Christians to have fewer civil rights than Christians. That's who has been his power base. And a lot of those people are foreign policy isolationists like Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene. So this has strongly damaged J.D. Vance for the post-Trump era. And, it remains to be seen what Trump does in Iran if he does end up sending troops and a lot of people get killed. I mean, this is that would be incredibly good for Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been openly anti-Trump for several months now, and says that he betrayed his promises that there would be no wars, no foreign wars. So, I would say ultimately this is going to strengthen the people who have argued that Trump has betrayed MAGA. That's what I would say at this point.
Could the Republican Party move beyond Trump?
At this point, the only way it would move beyond Trump is to go even further to the right, I would say. So if they're going to move past him, so it would be somebody like a Tucker Carlson, who also, actually had Nick Fuentes on his podcast and had a really chummy interview with him, and said that Republicans should defend him. And we're seeing that also with Megyn Kelly standing up for Fuentes, and also Candace Owens, who has become extremely anti-Semitic and also very hateful toward women. And, so that's the trajectory in the Republican Party. The people who are their donor class, who might have some more moderate viewpoints, they're not interested in investing in media for their side. And so that side of less extreme Republicans has basically no power in the party.
Matthew Sheffield, thanks for your insights.
Yes, my pleasure.
What do you think? Will the war on Iran actually hurt the Republican Party and Donald Trump? And if so, what comes next? Let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.